Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. So I am so excited to do this review today because I did not expect to have the reaction that I had to reading this book. This is On a Clear Day, you can see Block Island by Gage Greenwood. I received this in my most recent Twisted Retreat package, even though I think I kept just referring to it as Block Island in that, but it does have the full title of On a Clear Day, you can see Block Island. For the rest of this video, I'll probably just refer to it as Block Island, though, because this is a very, very long title. And I had never heard of Gage Greenwood before, but I thought that the cover was really, really cool. It's very, very spooky. Again, this is one of those Twisted Retreat limited edition covers, so you do have this alternative cover here, which we can flip around. And having read the book, like, just everything about this front cover versus this back cover, it makes so much sense. We do have this really cool interior cover as well. All of these covers are different from the original cover, so if it looks different than the copy that you have, that is why. My favorite thing, though, about this entire edition is the Langbass, I think that's how you say it, here. I loved this book. It's just so beautiful, and the attention to detail that went into this design after having read the book just makes so much more sense. But yeah, let's dive in and chat about this. I'm gonna read the back of the book very quickly, but the first thing I do want to say is that Block Island is a real place. In fact, a lot of this book takes place in real places, and I was like so wholly captivated having been to many of these places. I go to Rhode Island quite often. It's mainly in like Block Island and Tanner Switch. I've not been to either of those, but I do know a lot of the surrounding area, especially like Newport and Providence. So I was really, really stoked reading this book because I really understood where everything was, and what it's supposed to look like and the vibe that it was supposed to have. And I thought it captured like New England very, very well. So very, very thrilled about that. I love when I read books on places that I have been before and they capture it very well. But let's read the back of the book. So it says, some horrors never end. 4 years after the Keating family endured the darkest experiences of their lives, the children are still fighting to move on. Charlie's anxiety has control of his life. Angela is afraid of the dark. Brian suffers from a drug addiction. Chrissy struggles to remember what happened to them, the details forever haunting the outskirts of her mind. But when new information comes to light about what they had witnessed, they make a plan to escape their problems once and for all. Sometimes the only way to confront your demons is to face them head on. And so the Keating siblings decide to go back to the island and call their monsters out of the darkness. They soon realize the terror awaiting is much more than they bargained for. This book was not at all what I was expecting. Like, at all. There's so much character development. There's so much commentary on difficult life situations. There is so much in this book, and it is heartfelt, it is gut-wrenching, it is terrifying, it is creepy, it is a roller coaster of emotions. And I think the Langbass is really, 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 really scary. I think the full title for this creature is the Langbass, like, Wobenender. It's said once in the whole book, and it's German, and even if I had like the correct spelling, I'm sure I would sit here and just absolutely demolish that pronunciation. But the actual German translation is Long Pale Fog Dweller. And I Googled it because I was like, what does this mean? Where did this name come from? And I had like kind of Googled these creatures, and I was like, I think these are made up, but that is the German translation, and I think it's a perfect way to captivate what these creatures are. And that honestly is kind of my only big complaint with this book, is I just wanted the monsters to be a little bit less cliche. They are not very cliche at all, but I will say, and I don't want to ruin it for anybody, their one weakness, I was kind of like, it's been done so many times, and I like wish they had chosen some other direction for the weakness of the monsters. But if I was to take this book apart, that would really be the one thing that I was like, I don't know how much I felt about that. But beyond that, I loved it. I loved how we got such an amazing deep look at our main characters. The opening scenes where we have Jackson and his kids first move into the house where they first experience the terrors on Block Island, I thought was fantastic. It was really well done, and it really set up all of the characters to kind of go in one direction with who they were going to be. And then once the event happens, to see that all of them have completely reverted to different characters because of this one life-changing event, I thought was brilliant. I really loved watching kind of the downward spirals of these characters. This is not necessarily a story about growth or personal development, even though there are times and characters where that happens. This is a book about a family basically covered in tragedy. It touches on something that I love quite a lot in horror, which is familial horror. I feel like I talk about that primarily with Anya Alborn quite a lot, but I thought Gage Greenwood did a really, really good job of it. Another thing that I loved about this book is I was so invested in so many of the characters, especially Charlie and Tiffany and Jackson, and to an extent Chrissy and Angela. But I was rooting for these characters over and over and over and over again, even when they had done bad things, and Brian too even. And then when their stories start to conclude and we start to figure out what's going to happen to the various different characters, I had this gut-wrenching moment of being like, please don't let that be that character's ending. Please don't let that be that character's ending. Like, I felt so attached to these fictional characters because the way Gage Greenwood was able to write just how human and realistic and tragic they were. I just wanted things to go well for them. And I'm going to tell you, like, there's not a lot of happy endings in this story. But there's also a lot of what I like to call the Game of Thrones effect, where, like, your favorite characters aren't necessarily safe. And they could be taken out earlier than you think. And it's one of those things where the way that Greenwood did it, it was so visceral and it was so unexpected. And there's I'm going to call it like the catalyst death of a character. It's not the first, but it's definitely the one that I think really sets the tone for the entire book. That is the one that I was like really horrified by. That scene, it was so gut-wrenching and depressing and sad, and it made me take this book a lot more seriously than I was originally planning on. I read a lot of horror for fun, and then to have that kind of in the very like beginning of the climax of the book, that kind of scene was terrifying. It was terrifying. And then the fate of that character is kind of left up in the air for a while, and you have to kind of come to the same conclusions that the other main characters do about that character, just constantly holding out hope that maybe what you read didn't happen, but deep down knowing that's exactly what happened. And I just thought it was so well done. I thought this book was so well done. And it's scary in a way that the concepts it talks about are just deeply unnerving, and the concepts of family is deeply unnerving. And sometimes you do everything right and you try to better yourself and you try to make amends or put your best foot forward and it doesn't work. And then other times you just accept defeat and you end up in the exact same place as somebody who tried to escape. I loved this kind of doom that was written around this entire family, and I loved it. This is a 5-star read for me. This was an absolute 5-star read for me. I also really loved the folklore that was introduced in this book. There's a lot of folklore about these Langbast creatures. I thought it was done very well, and it was very tastefully added throughout the book. So there were moments where you got like a lot of exposition and a lot of explanation on what's happening, but they were always kind of cut off or left open-ended, so Greenwood could kind of introduce the rest of his concepts later on, and everything kind of unraveled at the right time. I loved the twist on why this was happening to this family. I thought that was really, really incredible too. I didn't predict it, and when it all kind of started falling together, I was like, oh wow, that makes a lot of sense. And I thought like the world that the Langbasses are in and come from and operate in, and how they kind of navigate into our world, was also very, very, very well done. I'm not going to put spoilers in this video because I don't think I need to say what I loved about this book. It's the overall tone of everything. It's very, very bleak. It's very intelligent. It makes a lot of commentary, again, on the family unit, on the individual person, on kind of these concepts of fate, and sometimes how, like, life just isn't fair. And I loved it. And I felt so connected to so many characters. I loved Charlie. And I loved his relationship with Tiffany and Doug. I thought that was such a fantastic story. It reminded me of reading, like, this cool, cozy coming-of-age story. Like, horror aside, just his story I thought was so precious. Angela and Chrissy's kind of at heads, opposites attract kind of sibling rivalry I thought was really, really interesting. I couldn't tell if they were twins. I'm pretty sure they were the same age, but they kept referring to Angela as, like, a younger sister. So I also wasn't sure if they were, like, Irish twins, because they were both 9 at one point, but it seemed like maybe Angela was, like, definitely younger than Chrissy. I wasn't sure about that. So that was, like, just the nitpicky thing that I found with the book. But just overall, I'm having such a hard time talking about this book because I don't really want to give away what it's about, because I think it was such a journey to try and put the book together. I read this book in 3 days. I really, really didn't want to put it down, and the only times I put it down was when I had to. And I am just, I can't wait to read more from Gage Greenwood, because I'm so thrilled with what it is and everything that is in here. And the title actually makes a lot of sense too. I loved the On a Clear Day You Can See Block Island, because this isn't actually about Block Island. This isn't about a spooky island. The island isn't evil in itself. It's something that inhabits the island that causes this kind of chaos for the family. And it's this concept of fate and something that is preordained and something that is out of your control. And I just loved how Greenwood handled it. And I can't wait to read more from him. I am so, so thrilled with this book. I'm really having a hard time talking about this. Primarily because, too, I think one of the things that I thought was so cool about this book is I would be hard-pressed to say who the main character is. At one point, I thought it was Charlie. At another point, I thought it was Jackson. At some point, it could have been Tiffany. It could have been Chrissy. It could have been Angela. This book is really good at not having a main lead and kind of dispersing that that concept throughout everybody primarily involved. And one of the characters I do really want to talk about is the story arc with Brian. I thought that was one of the most tragic things that I had ever read, and it's something too that the horror in Brian's life is the most rooted in reality, the most believable, the thing that actually could happen, but it's also something that is so far removed from the rest of the story, and it's just in there kind of as this gut punch. And when you read it, you're kind of like, I'm not really sure why this is happening. I kind of want to, like, sob inconsolably, because, like, this was such a horrific thing to read. But then you get to how Brian's storyline kind of connects back to Jackson's storyline, and it all just really makes sense. And it's just this beautiful tragedy. Again, that is entirely rooted in reality. And I really loved how Gage Greenwood was able to take, again, things that are very, very real and happen every single day, these real life horrors and these real life tragedies, and parallel it to this concept of doomed fate, and tell just a very complete story. I was a little worried towards the end of this book, where I thought maybe it was going to end on a cliffhanger and be, like, book 1 in a series, and that was just, like, I wasn't thrilled with that, but it's not. It seems like it's going that way, and then it kind of has this, like, weird chapter that takes place kind of removed from everything else in the story that kind of ties everything up with a bow really, really nicely. And normally I wouldn't be a fan of that, but I actually loved how it helped conclude the lore of everything, but also really helped bookend the story as a whole. And it does have a very satisfying ending. I was very happy with the ending. And yeah, this was amazing. This was beautiful. I don't know. I didn't expect it to be as heavy as it is. I know when I unboxed it, somebody had commented that it was a very heartbreaking story. And as I was reading it, I was kind of like, oh, like, okay, like the beginning chapters are like they're heavy, and then it just kept getting heavier and heavier and heavier and heavier. But I thought it was fantastic. I thought it was scary. I thought it was beautiful. So 5 out of 5 stars. Definitely recommend this book. Anyway, that is all that I have for you guys today. As always, I try to post every Monday and Thursday, sometimes on Saturdays. And if you enjoy these videos, please hit the like and subscribe buttons down below, and I will catch you on the next one. Mwah.